Welcome to the Princeton Festival podcast, where we take you behind the scenes of New Jersey's premier performing arts festival.
For my eyes, a man that I despise has turned me into a man I like.
With directors, producers, artists, and supporters, we explore the creative process and the challenges of making music today. Join us on this musical adventure. My name is Eva Kastner-Puschel. I'm the host of this show. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Grammy-nominated cellist Michelle Djokic. Welcome, Michelle.
Hello, Eva. Thank you so much for inviting me.
And thank you for speaking with me today. It's a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.
So, Michelle, I read you are a versatile chamber musician, soloist, and orchestral player, and the founder and director of Concordia Chamber Players, an ensemble that has become a regular at the Princeton Festival year after year and is, according to the words of our artistic director, Richard Tangyuk, a highlight of our season. Can you tell me about the beginnings of Concordia Chamber Players and how you got involved with the festival?
Oh, that's a loaded question, Eva.
It is.
Those words from Richard are incredibly kind. Playing at the Princeton Festival is actually a highlight of Concordia's season, in fact. We started Concordia, well, there's some debate as to when it started, but my recollection is 1997, so that's quite some time ago. And it was started in the hopes that I could share the beauty of Bucks County and the bucolic setting with my colleagues from New York and allow for all of us to have a short escape to make chamber music in an ideal setting with an audience or for an audience that is so warm and receptive. It's now turned into something that has created some of the most memorable performances for many of us, due to the same reasons I started it. So I think my colleagues now, which are numerous, as you know, Concordia brings in several musicians on a rotating basis, it seems, but we all have so many memories now of wonderful encounters in unique settings and making phenomenal music together. So it's been exactly what I had imagined it could be, in fact. Being able to bring the concerts to Princeton, you know, we actually have quite a few patrons from Princeton that come to New Hope for the concerts, which always warms my heart that people make the effort to come and join us there. It's really not that far, but really Princeton has a plethora of offerings during the season. So for somebody to come to New Hope for a concert means that, that they really wanted to hear us. But to play for the audience in Princeton is really very special, because I think that because they have so many offerings there of concerts, when they do come, their ears are seasoned. I don't know if that makes sense. They really know what they're listening to, and yet they're so, the anticipation of a great concert is palpable in the hall. You can tell they're looking forward to what we're bringing them, despite everything they may have already heard in Princeton. So it's a very exciting event for us, the Princeton Festival. You can feel the excitement in town. You can feel in the audience. It's an honor that Richard brings us back every year. It's really a thrill.
Well, the honor is definitely ours. When you speak about the nature of your ensemble and the different musicians, did it start out that way, that you had different colleagues that you made music with, or was there a regular setup for the ensemble?
Well, regular in that I still have many people that we bring back in on a regular basis. You know, Eva, much of it is due to my wanting a certain group of people to get together. I try to imagine a chemistry set or somebody that I know their style of playing and what composition I think they would really shine in. Those type of elements come together when I put people together, and over the years, the personnel has changed, but keep in mind, many of my colleagues have gone on and taken orchestra jobs or moved around the world or taken positions in universities that prevent them, or even string quartets that prevent them from being able to take part in the Concordia Chamber Players. That's why I say that the door is always revolving. And I also, with my travels, encounter musicians in different parts of the world, and I imagine how fun it would be to share New Hope and the Concordia experience with them. I would say that there is a regular group, which is basically wonderful musicians, wonderful people, wonderful ingredients that all come together. And that's the criteria for how I design the seasons. I wish that if there was a concert every week, everybody would be playing there all the time.
I can imagine that. Yes. And, we are in desperate need of having live music around us. So now that you have different colleagues that you work with, is each performance project then different for you depending on the personnel that is involved, or how do you treat that?
Yes, completely different. I really enjoy turning the reins over, so to speak, to my colleagues. And it's always wonderful to see the ingredients that they bring to the table. I'm always very aware of, if I have two violinists, that I make sure each violinist is leading a work so that there's not a sense of hierarchy within the group. And it's wonderful when I see the mutual respect amongst my colleagues that exists, which is, sometimes not present in the regular world. So it's an inspiration to see my colleagues really rise to the occasion of bringing this music to life with the utmost integrity.
That's great. Is this also the reason that your programs are so versatile and often feature unknown or underperformed works?
I'm not sure that that's the reason. I have become known for that, it seems, after a while now. But, it's funny. I love so much the standard repertoire. And I think that it's essential that we all have a chance to hear all the Beethoven string quartets, all the Brahms piano quintets, piano quartets, the repertoire that's out there, the Beethoven, the Mozart. It's phenomenal works that one never tires of hearing them. However, live music is an opportunity to not only discover musicians, but to discover works, in my opinion. And we can always go to recordings and hear that everything's been recorded so many times of the master repertoire, and beautifully. Not that it isn't special live, but I think that coming to Concordia Chamber Players concerts is a moment to know, or everyone knows that they're going to find something that they didn't expect. It's like going to a movie premiere. You don't know what's really going to be out there, but you know it's going to be great. People know that the playing is going to be fantastic. They may not have heard of the piece, but the delivery of whatever the composition is going to be as wonderful as possible. My colleagues also actually, I think, enjoy the challenge of new music, or not new music, it's not as if it's all written in the 21st century, but of a work that they haven't encountered before, because it really, how do I say, for everybody to find something at the same time, to discover it at the same time, it's in equal playing ground. It's very exciting, exactly. So, you haven't heard it played before, you didn't even know the piece existed, perhaps. You don't know very much about this composer, and the whole journey is not just making the piece work, but also uncovering something about the composer, uncovering that composition for the first time. Some of the pieces there are no recordings of. So we really literally are going off of what we're hearing for the first time when we're playing together. It's really a thrill, and I have to believe, judging upon our audience coming back year after year in Concordia, that today's audience is, thirsting for an introduction to something new and exciting. And to discover that in the company of friends is even more exciting.
Yes.
So, you can talk about it at intermission. I never knew that Louise Ferenc was a composer. Who is Louise Ferenc?
Correct.
Or I didn't ever know. I never heard the Korngold string quartets. Or who knew that Dave Brubeck wrote a string quartet? I mean, the conversations I hear backstage when my board members come back and say, wow, you've got everybody talking about that piece, Michelle. That's really, to me, just a wonderful element of the whole experience of going to a concert is that everybody's sharing in the discovery of this new work, just not the performers, but the audience as well.
Let me ask you, did that take some time to get the audience to open up to new repertoire, or were they open from the get-go?
That's a good question. I suspect that you might get a different answer if you asked my audience, but from the get-go, I think it was a little difficult because if you think back in 1997, one of the concerts I programmed, the Schoenberg Verklärernacht, and oddly enough, I felt that we had been labeled as the people who play contemporary music. And I mean, I guess that was rightfully so. Maybe back then it wasn't played so frequently, but that moniker seemed to stick with me, or stick with Concordia for some time, until people realized that, in fact, the excellence was what people were coming to hear. And by the way, we programmed Schoenberg Verklärernacht at least once since then, and of course, it's one of the most magical works on earth. But it's that people have come to realize that if they don't recognize the composer, that doesn't mean the experience will not be valuable.
So I was also listening to a recording from last year's season that you did with Concordia Chamber Players within the Princeton Festival's 2019 season in June. It's Mendelssohn's Piano Trio No. 2 in C minor, Opus 66. I picked an excerpt of the last movement, the finale, Allegro appassionato, which means fast and passionate, because I think it shows so wonderfully how you interact with the other players. So I would like to play this excerpt and then we can talk a little bit about it. Unfortunately, I had to fade out here. I would have really loved to play the entire 9 minutes of this gorgeous music. And I have to say, it was so beautifully interpreted by all of you. Alexei Kenny on the violin, Michel Djokic on cello, and Michael Brown on piano. What comes to your mind when you think back to the moment when you played it?
Oh, I'm sorry, I have to shake myself out of that performance.
The music is so uplifting, and I'm sure that many audience members may have detected a very familiar tune, the 16th century chorale tune, Herr Gott, dich loben alle wir, or known in English as the Old Hundredth, with the lyrics, Praise God, to whom all blessings flow. I see you have a very personal reaction to that.
Just being denied the chance to play music for so long, and hearing that is just heartbreaking. We're all in the same boat, and we can't be together, but hearing that is just, it's gut-wrenching. Alexei Kenny is one of the greatest young artists out there today, in my opinion, as is Michael Brown. And to share that journey with them was absolutely magical.
I have to say, for me, listening to this particular excerpt, it was the dialogue between the two string instruments on top of the rocking piano movement, the chorale, that was exhilarating.
That was really an extraordinary performance, for sure. I still see us rehearsing in Michael's apartment in New York, and my first encounter with Alexei Kenny was that very work we performed in Seattle at Emerald City Music, Chamber Music series. And my first encounter with him, having that experience with a person who's the same age as my son, was just remarkable to see that level of maturity. And that's why I made sure that I would have another chance to do that with him in Princeton. But he's a remarkable artist, and he brings so much to the table. in his music making and his collaborating. I think Alexei would probably, even though he's got concertos, well, should have concertos right now, but he has quite a career ahead of him. I know chamber music means the world to him as well.
So when you play with musicians like him and you tackle a piece like the Mendelssohn Trio, how do you go about rehearsing?
When you play with this caliber of musician and artist, well, everybody shows up knowing their part quite well. There's no need to worry about that. But aside from that, there is that level of trust and understanding and wanting to hear what your colleague has to say so that you can be part of that discussion instead of just coming to the table saying, this is what I have to say. I think you hear that in that performance of the Mendelssohn, that there was a constant leaning and pulling and tugging on each other's thoughts.
Absolutely.
And, yeah.
It's wonderful to hear your artistry. Can you tell me about what got you there and what challenges did you face in learning a stringed instrument?
I grew up in a very large family of everyone who played an instrument, being the seventh child, and we all played a string instrument. So it wasn't anything that foreign to me, and everybody had to practice. That was just a given. So again, that was something that I accepted maybe reluctantly. On Saturdays when everybody else was watching cartoons, I went off to my music school. But the rewards came so quickly. By rewards, I mean the opportunity to find myself amongst like-minded people and other musicians that had the similar passions that I had. We would gather on Saturdays and make music together in chamber music, and I was in a chamber orchestra and started out in Philadelphia at the Settlement Music School and then went on to Juilliard pre-college. And I remember taking the train frequently by myself when I was a little girl from Trenton into New York and having to navigate the subway system alone, but then getting to Juilliard and having this one day that seemed to last forever of all these incredible experiences, from private lessons to chamber music to orchestra. And going to college there was really another whole volume of experiences. I still go back and revisit so many times because it was such a rich period of my life and so many incredible musicians that I was allowed to work with. So I would say that if a child loves it, to make everything possible for them to be comfortable and surrounded by other musicians. It's not an easy thing to be the only one going to school with a cello on your back. But as soon as I found my people, as we say, my daughter talks about that in medical school. She finds her people in whatever field she chose. It's a similar thing in music. You find your people and you really know you're in the right place. To allow that to happen for a child, I think, is critical.
Before we get to the end of this interview today, because I know we have so many more things to talk about, I'm sure, but let's move on to some rapid fire questions. And don't overthink them. Just tell me the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
Haydn or Scarlatti?
Haydn.
Violin or viola?
Viola.
Record player or smartphone?
Record player.
Bebop or cool jazz?
Cool jazz and bebop.
Milk chocolate or dark chocolate?
Dark for sure.
Fast food or 7-course menu?
7-course menu.
Mountain or beach?
A little bit of both, but the beach.
Wonderful. And that brings us to the end of today's show. So thank you again, Michelle, for speaking with me today.
Thank you, Eva. This has really been a pleasure. A wonderful encounter through the phone, but it's really wonderful to have this discussion and the ability to think about what's on the horizon for all of us.
Absolutely. And I'm very grateful to get to know you as well. And I wish you all the best in this very difficult time. If you at home are interested in reading more about Michelle Djokic and her ensembles and projects, please visit her websites concordiaplayers.org and musicywest.org. You will also find those links included in the description of this podcast. And we certainly hope that you will come out and hear her live when she next appears at the Princeton Festival. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Be sure to visit our website at www.princetonfestival.org to learn more about upcoming events as well as ways on how to support the festival. Please join us again next time for another exciting episode in our series. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.